Welcome to this chess opening introduction to the Halloween Gambit. And before I continue, I would like to thank all viewers and subscribers for supporting this channel and invite you to leave comments requesting material and voting for what you would like to see for the upcoming 100th video on this channel. And so this Halloween Gambit was requested by a viewer, and we also had another viewer that requested gambits and traps. And so here is the Halloween Gambit. And this Halloween Gambit begins with e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, and then knight to c3, the three knights opening, followed by knight to f6, the four knights game. And so at this point, we have the Halloween Gambit with this move right here, where instead of a pawn, a knight is gambited and sacrificed here on e5. And so this knight is recaptured, which would be the best option for black to take this knight and go ahead in material. And so white gives up this knight, but in exchange he moves forward to d4, taking control of the center and driving this knight back. And so I'll play through a typical scenario of how this Halloween Gambit may play out, and then I'll go back over it and show you some alternative options. And so here the knight retreats to g6. And then we have the pawns pushing forward, chasing these knights away. And so if the knight retreats, as the knight cannot go here or it would be captured, here it would be captured. So this knight retreats. And then we have bishop developing, eyeing this f7 pawn. And so then we have bishop to b4 pinning this knight. And so black is ahead in material. So with this move, he may just exchange off here, further reducing the material. So whenever you're ahead in material, it's to your advantage to exchange off the rest of the material and use what you have left over to win in the end game by promoting pawns. And the person behind in material would like to exchange off pawns but avoid material exchanges, because once the pawns have been removed, even if they're behind in material, especially if they were just losing by a knight or a bishop, in the end it's impossible to mate with just a knight and king versus a king, or a bishop and king versus king. So anyway, moving on here. So queen to f3, a checkmate threat here on f7, and then capture, exchanging material. And then we have the queen moving to e7 to stop this mating threat here. And the game may continue with castling by white. And so here white is behind a piece, but he only has a pawn for this piece that he is down, but he has complete control of the center for now. So if black can coordinate his pieces and make it through this middle game, overall black is probably better in this Halloween Gambit, but this might be a good surprise to use in blitz chess, where it would be unexpected by your opponent. I wouldn't imagine they would see this Halloween Gambit too often, and so it might be a good surprise to throw off your opponent. And so f6 here, trying to break up the center, and then capture by white. Now white is behind in material, but he should not be afraid of pawn exchanges and also opening the center, because his king is safe while black's king is still in the center. And we could have a possible threat such as moving this bishop up and then trying to pin the queen to the king with a rook on e1. But the queen moves out looking to exchange queens. As black is ahead in material, he would like to exchange off more material. And the queen avoids the trade, moving here to pin this knight to the king. And we still have this possible check by a rook on e1, and perhaps this bishop could move down here attacking the knight. We'll see how this plays out. So h6, avoiding a pin on this rook by this pawn, so the pawn moves forward to be protected now by this g7 pawn. And after developing this bishop and connecting the rooks, we have the king moving off of this open e-file because the rooks will surely take over here. And one of the rooks does move to e1. And now we have d6 to try and develop this bishop. And here a pawn push with f4. So this pawn could move forward eventually, possibly attacking the knight, but also trying to give space to this rook. And if this pawn is captured, a line may open up on the queen here by this rook. And so the knight retreats back, and then we have the queen repositioning here, where it will attack this b pawn, preventing the bishop from developing right away, or else the b pawn will be captured, and then we will have an attack on this rook. And so the rook moves over to guard this b pawn. And now here we have this pawn push, and white is daring black to capture this pawn with the bishop or the knight and to open lines up on the queen. But the computer here recommends queen to f8 instead of capturing that pawn. So if the queen retreats back to f8, then we may have a4, pushing this pawn, gaining some space on the queen side, but maybe trying to push forward and exchange off this weak pawn. And so next, well, this is as far as I went in this example game here, and I'll go back and show other variations. But in this position, we have black ahead in material. His king is still kind of stuck in the middle, but if black can coordinate his pieces, get this bishop out and this knight, and coordinate a little better, in the end he'll be ahead. And the computer evaluation gives over half a pawn, almost 3/4 of a pawn worth of material in black's favor. So it's kind of an unbalanced game. The king is still in the center here, but overall, if black can coordinate his pieces, he'll probably have the long-term advantage in this game. And I'm going to go back to the beginning and we'll look at some other options here. So if we go all the way back, run through the moves again. So e4, e5, knight to f3. So the knights come out to the 4 knights game. And then the Halloween Gambit is a variation of the 4 knights game where this knight is gambited here in exchange for that pawn. And after a capture, once again, we'll show that the pawn pushes forward here on d4, taking the center and chasing away the knight. And so in the game, the knight just retreated here to g6. But another option may have been to go to c6. And here, white has the option to attack either one of these knights. So in this variation, instead of attacking this pawn, the other knight can be attacked. And so if this knight moves to e5, then we could have a possible continuation such as f4 attacking the knight again, and the knight ends up on g6 anyway. But then we have e5 attacking the other knight, which retreats, and then a further pawn push with d6, severely restricting and cramping black's position by preventing this black d7 pawn from moving. And if we have an exchange of pawns here, now this bishop is trapped in, this bishop is trapped, and white is severely cramped in this position, or excuse me, black is severely cramped in this position by this white pawn. And then queen to f6, so trying to develop some of his pieces. And then after b5, a threat here of forking the king and this rook. And so in this position, the black player ended up moving king to d8. And so after this king to d8 move, we see that the computer evaluation has swung into white's favor. And so here we have different options. After king to d8, next, let's see. Okay, after this king to d8 move, because it has swung into white's favor, we will look at another option instead of that king to d8 move. And so black would have another option. Instead of king to d8, he could play a capture here on this f4 pawn. And so that leaves black ahead as he was before, with over half a pawn's worth of compensation, even though his development is severely restricted. And then the game may play out here now with this knight to c7 move. And once the king moves, we see here that now black is ahead a full pawn. So the game may continue out with a capture of the rook, and then the queen checking, and then here another check. And so white is just quite open here with attacks by black. And then we have a check here and exchange of queens, a block of the check, and the game may continue for a few more moves here. b6, preventing this knight from escaping out here after a capture of this pawn. So the knight being trapped takes material with it, and a check, and the king can move. But we see in this position, after this pawn push and a counter pawn push on this side, the position is unbalanced. We have this majority of pawns on the queen side for white, but black has a majority on the king side, and the material is unbalanced. But overall, the computer evaluation shows that black would be ahead here. And So this is probably not a recommended line for white, but if this game was played in a quick blitz game, I think it would just turn into a really crazy game with a lot of tactics and mistakes by both sides, I would imagine. So this could be a good surprise, especially if you practiced playing this Halloween Gambit and figure out what lines you prefer and what lines you would play better or worse at, so you know what to do and what to avoid. And so if we went back here, let's see, to this position where the king could have moved to d8 here to avoid this fork, but instead we had, after knight to b5, instead of the king moving to d8, we played knight captures here on f4. And then, let's see if I can look through these options. Alright, I think I already went over this line. So let me go back once again to the beginning. I'm sure I'm not covering everything here, but I'll try and go over a few more lines, and if there are any questions or comments, please leave them. I'll try and go more in depth or answer your questions if I can. And let's go back here. I'll run through it one more time. e4, e5. So the 4 knights, the Halloween Gambit is the capture of this pawn, giving up your knight, and then countering by attacking in the center, chasing the knight away, and then after e5, this knight retreats, and then we develop the bishop. And so here, in the original game, we played b4 to pin this knight and trade off this knight to further reduce the material that white has. But the computer really wants to see d5 played here. We see that the bishop to b4 move is good with a more than half a pawn evaluation in black's favor. But here we see 0.83, so almost a full pawn after this d5 move. And so after d5, the computer recommends to capture in the center. And so after bishop captures, probably by sacrificing that pawn, it gives black a little bit of a counterattack on that bishop, which buys him time to develop. And so with c6 and the retreat of this bishop, now we have this b4 move anyway, pinning the knight. And after castling, capture to trade off more material, a recapture, and then this other knight is developed. So in this position, the evaluation is showing black, ahead a fair amount, and so it's up to white to prove how his control of the center here and his slightly more developed pieces, but I don't know. In this position, black is about ready to castle. He's already developed both of his knights now, even though they're not in the greatest position. But once again, I don't know, it looks like black comes out slightly better in this opening and shouldn't have any problems. But the shock value and surprise factor in this Halloween Gambit, could help you win some blitz games for sure, especially if you practice these lines. And so let's see if I just want to check and see if there is anything else to go over here. All right. Okay, I see one more line that I'm going to cover real quick. I'll run back through the beginning so you can see one more time how everything played out. And so e4, e5, knight to f3. And I recommend this on a board, a physical board if possible. If you're learning an opening and you have a book, just play through some of the games in the book on a board, and if you repeat from the beginning multiple times, it'll really help cement those lines and that new opening into your memory. And so anyway, the four knights game here, the Halloween Gambit variation, once again capturing and giving up that knight, allowing this pawn push to drive back the knight, and then a continuing attack here with e5, knight to g8, bishop to c4, and then we had a pin on this knight, and then queen to f3, capture, trading off the pieces. And so here we had this threat of mate, and so the queen protects against that mating threat on f7. And then white castles to safety, and here this pawn push trying to break up the center, and if white takes, the knight could develop and black would be ready to castle shortly. And so white captures, but here instead we have the queen capturing instead of this knight to try and trade off these queens. And so here black avoids this, avoiding the trade, and this pawn pushes forward to prevent any threats later on this knight and a possible capture of this rook, especially if this pawn is pinned to the rook and cannot protect that knight. But anyway, the game continues on with bishop to d2, and now the knight, or excuse me, the king moves out of this pin on the knight. And so anyway, we have rook at a to e1, taking control of the open e file, d6, preparing to develop that bishop, and a pawn push here. And then the knight retreats, queen back to f3, and lining up on this queen here, but also attacking this b7 pawn to prevent the bishop from developing. And then so the rook moves to cover that. And then after f5, in the first example, after this f5 move, we had a queen to f8. But I wanted to show quickly what would happen if this pawn is captured. So one option is the bishop capturing, and then the game may play out with queen retreating, pinning that bishop to the queen, and then here a pawn push threatening to close out this bishop with another push to d5. And now we have an attack here on the bishop, but that is ignored by a counterattack. And then this bishop captures the knight here. Then a capture by the rook, and now we see the computer evaluation is even. And so this is why that pawn was not captured earlier in the game. And so trying to get rid of this weak pawn on the queen side. And the game may play out like this. And the evaluation is still showing equal here. But now, in this variation, it is swung back to black's favor. So if this rook was sacrificed, and then after a capture, white could chase the king here on e7. We see how this game in the Halloween Gambit could potentially just veer off into some crazy lines. But now we're showing with this attack that black is ahead again. So now if I play it out further, we see white swarming around black's king, but black doing the same to white here. And then both sides, well, black trying to defend and white trying to remain safe here. A counterattack by white. And so then here we have a check. King would move. And this is how this game may play out. I'll show you a few more variations. But it just looks like another variation where black is pretty safe here. And that's as far as I'll go. And here, that whole variation there was just where the bishop captured. So instead of that bishop capturing or the queen retreating, another option would be if the knight captured. But here we show once again an equal evaluation, and now it swung into white's favor, and we have this possible g4 move. So the knight is pinned to the queen, even though the queen is protected. Here it shows the game is about even, and after knight at g to e7, even allowing this pawn to be captured, or excuse me, this knight to be captured by the pawn, the game is still even. And after knight captures, and so that's as far as I'll go. Overall, I think the Halloween Gambit favors black, but it's probably worth trying out for a surprise factor and to shock your opponent, especially in a blitz game. And if you have tried out this Halloween Gambit and have some experience and kind of play around with different lines to see what works for you and what doesn't, you may have an advantage in some blitz games in this, especially if your opponent doesn't know what to do and you take control of the center and he makes a few mistakes and you get an attack going. But if black plays solid enough, then he should be okay. So I recommend just try out the Halloween Gambit and see how you do, and feel free to leave comments on how it turned out for you. And so if you like this video, this chess opening introduction to the Halloween Gambit, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments and suggestions. And also remember that the 100th video for this channel is coming up, and whoever or whatever topic or subject receives the most requests and votes on, that is what the subject of the 100th video will be about. So I invite you all to leave your comments, and thank you very much and have a great day.